Most people think living on $30,000 or less is impossible in today's economy. They imagine surviving on ramen noodles, wearing the same 3 shirts for months, and basically living like a college student forever. But what if I told you that's completely wrong? What if I told you that with the right strategies, you could not only survive, but actually thrive on an extremely low income while still enjoying the things that matter most to you? My name is Nick, and I've spent years helping people understand that financial freedom isn't about how much you earn, it's about how smart you are with what you have. If you're interested in learning how to master your money regardless of your income level, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button if this video helps you. Here's something that might shock you. According to recent data, nearly 40% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency expense without borrowing money or selling something. Meanwhile, there are people earning half of what these individuals make who have built substantial emergency funds and are actually investing for their future. The difference isn't luck or secret knowledge passed down through generations of wealthy families. The difference is understanding that living well on less money is a skill that can be learned by anyone willing to challenge conventional thinking about what constitutes a comfortable lifestyle. Let me start with a story that perfectly illustrates this point. I once knew a guy named Marcus who worked as a part-time librarian making about $28,000 a year. His coworkers constantly complained about being broke, eating cheap fast food for lunch every day, and never having money for anything fun. Meanwhile, Marcus would show up with homemade meals that looked like they came from a restaurant, took weekend trips to nearby cities, and somehow managed to save money every month. When people asked how he did it, he'd just smile and say he had a system. That system is exactly what we're going to break down today. The first thing you need to understand about living on an extremely low income is that it requires a complete shift in how you think about money and value. Most people approach their finances backwards. They earn money, spend it on whatever catches their attention, and then hope there's something left over at the end of the month. This approach guarantees financial stress regardless of how much you earn. People making 6 figures often live paycheck to paycheck using this exact method. The secret to thriving on a low income is becoming intentional with every single dollar. This doesn't mean living like a monk or never enjoying yourself. It means becoming incredibly strategic about where your money goes and making sure every expense serves a specific purpose in your life. When you only have $30,000 or less to work with, there's no room for mindless spending or financial autopilot. Let's talk about the foundation of living well on less, and that's keeping your fixed expenses as low as humanly possible. Your fixed expenses are those monthly bills that show up whether you want them to or not. Rent, utilities, insurance, phone bills, and any subscription services you might have. These expenses are like financial quicksand because once you commit to them, they drain your resources month after month without you having to think about it. Here's where most people make their first crucial mistake. They calculate what they can afford based on their gross income instead of their actual take-home pay. If you're earning $30,000 annually, you're probably taking home somewhere around $22,000 to $24,000 after taxes, depending on your location and tax situation. That means you're working with roughly $2,000 per month, not the $2,500 you might expect. The golden rule for housing when you're living on a tight budget is to keep it under 30% of your take-home pay. But honestly, if you can get it lower, even better. That means if you're taking home $2,000 monthly, you should be spending no more than $600 on housing. I can already hear some of you thinking that's impossible, but let me share some strategies that can make this work. First, consider house hacking. This might sound complicated, but it's actually quite simple. Find a small duplex or house with a basement apartment, live in one part, and rent out the other. Your tenant's rent can cover most or even all of your mortgage payment. I know someone who bought a small duplex for $90,000, lived in one side, and rented the other for enough to cover the entire mortgage payment plus insurance. His housing cost went from $800 in rent to basically zero. If buying isn't an option, roommates become your best friend. Splitting a decent 2-bedroom apartment between 2 people can often cost less than renting a studio by yourself. Plus, you get the benefit of shared utilities and maybe even shared grocery costs if you coordinate well with your roommate. Another option that more people should consider is geographic arbitrage. This is a fancy way of saying move somewhere cheaper. If you're currently paying $1,200 for a 1-bedroom apartment in a high-cost city, that same money could get you a nice 2-bedroom house in dozens of smaller towns across the country. Yes, you might earn slightly less, but if your housing costs drop by $500 or $600 monthly, you've just given yourself a massive raise in purchasing power. Now, let's address the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about when discussing low-income living. Transportation costs can absolutely destroy your budget if you're not careful. The average American spends over $9,000 annually on transportation between car payments, insurance, gas, and maintenance. When you're living on $30,000 or less, spending nearly a third of your income on getting around is financial suicide. Here's the harsh truth about cars that the automotive industry doesn't want you to know. That shiny car payment might make you feel successful, but it's probably the single biggest obstacle between you and financial stability. Every month you send $300 or $400 to a car company is money that could be building your emergency fund, paying off debt, or being invested for your future. The solution isn't necessarily to go without a car, but to be extremely strategic about your vehicle choice. Buy something reliable and cheap with cash if at all possible. A 10-year-old Toyota Camry or Honda Civic might not turn heads, but it will get you from point A to point B for years while costing you almost nothing beyond gas and basic maintenance. I'd rather drive a boring car and have money in the bank than drive something impressive and be broke. If you absolutely must finance a vehicle, never, and I mean never, finance more than you can pay off in 2 years. Car loans that stretch beyond 24 months are wealth destroyers disguised as affordable monthly payments. The bank loves those 60-month loans because they make far more money in interest, but you should avoid them like the plague. For those living in areas with decent public transportation, seriously consider whether you need a car at all. Between buses, trains, rideshare services, and the occasional rental car for longer trips, you might discover that going car-free saves you hundreds of dollars every month while also giving you time to read or work during your commute instead of dealing with traffic stress. Food represents another area where people consistently overspend without realizing the impact on their overall financial picture. The average American household spends over $7,000 annually on food, with roughly half of that going to restaurants and takeout. When you're living on $30,000 or less, spending $3,000 a year on restaurant meals is a luxury you simply cannot afford if you want to build any kind of financial stability. But here's the thing about cooking at home that most people get wrong. They assume it means eating bland, boring meals and spending hours in the kitchen every day. This couldn't be further from the truth. With some basic planning and a few key skills, you can eat better than most people while spending a fraction of what they spend on food. The key to eating well on a tight budget starts with meal planning, but not the complicated spreadsheet nightmare that most financial gurus recommend. I'm talking about simple, practical planning that takes maybe 15 minutes once a week. Pick one day, usually Sunday, to plan out your meals for the upcoming week. This isn't about becoming a master chef overnight. It's about avoiding the expensive panic that happens when you're hungry and have no idea what to eat. Start with staple ingredients that can be used in multiple ways throughout the week. Rice, beans, eggs, chicken thighs, potatoes, onions, and whatever vegetables are on sale that week. These ingredients might sound boring individually, but they're the building blocks of countless satisfying meals. You can turn them into stir fries, soups, breakfast hashes, or hearty stews that cost maybe $2 per serving instead of the $12 you'd pay for similar portions at a restaurant. Here's a game changer that most people overlook completely. Learn to love your freezer. When you find meat on clearance because it's approaching its sell-by date, buy it and freeze it immediately. When you cook a big pot of chili or soup, freeze half of it in individual portions. This creates your own personal convenience food library that costs a fraction of what you'd pay for frozen dinners from the store. And let's talk about the psychology of grocery shopping for a moment. Grocery stores are designed to separate you from your money as efficiently as possible. They put the most expensive items at eye level, pump in specific scents to make you hungry, and strategically place impulse purchases everywhere you look. Going shopping when you're hungry is like going to a casino when you're desperate for money. The house always wins. Always shop with a list and stick to it religiously. If something's not on your list, you don't buy it, period. This might sound extreme, but when you're working with limited resources, every unplanned purchase pushes something else out of your budget. That $5 bag of chips might seem insignificant, but it could be the difference between having enough money for gas to get to work next week or having to borrow money from someone. Now, let's address something that makes people uncomfortable but needs to be discussed. Entertainment and social expenses can completely derail a tight budget if you're not strategic about them. This doesn't mean becoming a hermit who never leaves the house or enjoys life. It means being creative about how you have fun and learning to find joy in experiences that don't require spending significant money. The pressure to keep up socially can be intense, especially when your friends or family members have higher incomes and different spending habits. When everyone else is suggesting expensive restaurants or costly weekend activities, it's easy to feel left out or embarrassed about your financial situation. But here's what I've learned from watching people navigate this successfully. The right people in your life will understand and support your financial goals, and the wrong people will make you feel bad about being responsible with money. Instead of always saying no to social invitations, become the person who suggests alternative activities. Host potluck dinners instead of going out to restaurants, organize hiking trips or visits to free museums instead of expensive entertainment venues, plan game nights or movie marathons at home. You'll often find that people actually prefer these activities because they're more relaxed and allow for better conversation than trying to talk over loud restaurant noise. Libraries have become entertainment gold mines that most adults completely ignore. Beyond books, most libraries offer free movies, internet access, community events, and even things like tool lending programs. Some libraries have maker spaces with equipment you can use for free. It's like having access to thousands of dollars worth of entertainment and resources for the cost of your taxes, which you're already paying anyway. Thrift stores and consignment shops should become your best friends when you need clothing or household items. The stigma around secondhand shopping is completely outdated and honestly pretty ridiculous when you think about it. Why would you pay full price for something when you can get the exact same item for 20% of the cost? Some of the most stylish people I know do most of their shopping at thrift stores, not because they have to, but because they've realized it's simply smarter. Here's a mindset shift that can transform how you think about purchases. Before buying anything non-essential, calculate how many hours of work it represents. If you take home $12 an hour after taxes and you're considering a $60 purchase, that's 5 hours of your life. Is that item really worth 5 hours of your time and energy? Sometimes the answer will be yes, but more often you'll realize that many purchases aren't worth the trade-off when you think about them in terms of your actual time investment. Emergency funds become even more critical when you're living on a low income because you have less flexibility to handle unexpected expenses. Most financial experts recommend 3 to 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund, but when you're just starting out on a tight budget, even $100 in savings can prevent a minor crisis from becoming a major financial disaster. Start small with your emergency fund. Even saving $5 or $10 a week adds up faster than you might expect. The goal isn't to have thousands of dollars immediately. The goal is to build the habit of paying yourself first and creating a buffer between you and financial catastrophe. Once you have your first $100 saved, you'll be amazed at how much more secure you feel, knowing you can handle a small, unexpected expense without panic. One of the most powerful strategies for living well on less money is learning to differentiate between what you want and what you actually need. Marketing messages constantly bombard us with reasons why we need the latest gadgets, fashion trends, or lifestyle upgrades. But when you're working with limited resources, falling for these messages can keep you trapped in a cycle of financial stress. The truth is, most of what we think we need is actually just stuff we've been convinced we want. You don't need the latest smartphone if your current one works fine. You don't need a gym membership if you can exercise at home or outdoors. You don't need cable television when streaming services cost a fraction of the price and offer more content than you could ever watch. This doesn't mean living a joyless existence where you never buy anything beyond absolute necessities. It means being intentional about your purchases and making sure they align with your values and priorities rather than just responding to whatever marketing message you encountered most recently. Creating systems and routines becomes essential when you're managing a tight budget because there's no room for financial mistakes or oversights. Set up automatic transfers to your savings account, even if it's just $25 a month. Use apps or simple spreadsheets to track your spending so you know exactly where your money is going. Schedule regular check-ins with yourself to review your finances and make adjustments as needed. The goal isn't to create complicated systems that require hours of maintenance. The goal is to create simple habits that keep you on track without requiring constant mental energy or decision-making about money. When you're living on $30,000 or less, you also need to become ruthless about subscription services and recurring charges. I swear, these things multiply like rabbits when nobody's paying attention. You sign up for a streaming service to watch one show, forget about it, and suddenly you're paying $12 a month for something you haven't used in 6 months. Do this with 5 or 6 different services, and you've just blown $60 or $70 monthly on digital clutter. Here's a fun exercise that might horrify you. Go through your bank statements from the last 3 months and highlight every recurring charge. You'll probably find subscriptions you completely forgot about, software you signed up for during some productivity binge, and gym memberships you haven't used since your New Year's resolution died in February. Canceling unused subscriptions is like finding free money in your couch cushions, except it's much more money and happens every month. The subscription economy is designed to make canceling as painful as possible. They make signing up a one-click process but require you to call during specific hours or navigate through 17 different web pages to cancel. Don't let this deter you. That 15 minutes of mild inconvenience could save you hundreds of dollars over the course of a year. Now let's talk about something that makes people uncomfortable but can dramatically impact your financial situation. Your social circle and the people you spend time with have enormous influence over your spending habits. If you're constantly around people who think nothing of dropping $50 on drinks or impulse buying expensive gadgets, you'll find yourself doing the same thing even when it doesn't align with your financial goals. This doesn't mean you need to dump all your friends and become a financial hermit. It means being aware of how social pressure affects your spending decisions and developing strategies to handle these situations. When friends suggest expensive activities, don't just say you can't afford it and leave it at that. Offer alternatives that fit your budget. Most people will respect your honesty and appreciate having options. If you're dealing with friends or family who don't understand or support your financial boundaries, that's actually valuable information about their character. People who pressure you to spend money you don't have or make you feel bad about being responsible with your finances aren't really looking out for your best interests. Insurance is another area where people often overpay without realizing it. Yes, you need insurance, but you don't need to pay more than necessary for it. Shop around for car insurance at least once a year. The same coverage that costs you $150 monthly with one company might cost $90 with another. That $60 monthly difference adds up to over $700 annually, which is significant money when you're living on a tight budget. Consider raising your deductibles if you have an emergency fund to cover them. Going from a $250 deductible to a $1,000 deductible can often reduce your monthly premiums by $30 or $40. If you're a safe driver who rarely makes claims, this trade-off makes perfect financial sense. Look, living on $30,000 or less isn't just possible, it's actually liberating once you get the hang of it. You'll sleep better knowing you're not drowning in debt. You'll stress less about money because you've built systems that work. And you might even discover that some of your happiest moments don't cost anything at all. The strategies we've covered today aren't revolutionary secrets, they're just common sense that's become surprisingly uncommon. Start with 1 or 2 changes, build momentum, and watch your financial stress disappear faster than your friend's interest in expensive restaurants when you suggest splitting the bill equally.